Welcome back. If you are a high school student in Florida or pretty much anywhere else and you want to play sports, you have to fill out a medical history form. Do you have asthma, allergies? Do you have seizures? It's that sort of stuff. But if you're a girl, the form has a few more questions, at least in Florida. And 5 of those questions, many girls don't even tell their parents about. Details like their menstrual cycle. The questions are optional, and they have been routine for about 2 decades. But today, 2 things are different. One, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and some states are looking to classify abortion as murder. And 2, many Florida schools are moving from paper forms to digital, and they've partnered with a new company called Activate. Activate is a public company, so Activate has to comply with subpoenas. You see where I'm going here? Activate legally can share your daughter's menstrual cycle with anybody, anyone, like the police, who might be nosing around about, say, an illegal abortion. Those police can subpoena your daughter's menstrual cycle. Talk about a violation of privacy. Talk about damning evidence. I want to bring in Dr. Chris Couturis. He is the pediatrician who served on the committee that crafted that questionnaire. He's a sports medicine specialist from Active Kid MD Pediatrics. Also with us is healthcare attorney Harry Nelson. He's the author of From Obamacare to Trump Care, Why You Should Care. Dr. Couturis, let me ask you off the bat. You helped to craft that questionnaire. And I think one of the first questions many of us who hear the story for the first time has is, why does anybody need to have the menstrual cycle information of a teenage girl?
That's a great question. The reason we ask is if a young athlete's having regular periods, it means she's getting appropriate energy. It means that her ovaries are releasing a hormone called estrogen that helps keep bone health. So there aren't many girls who are going to come into my office and say, you know what, I'm worried about not getting enough energy. I'm worried about possibly having weak bones. But if we work backwards and we ask them about their menstrual history, we find out if they're not having regular periods, they might be at higher risk for bone stress injuries, anorexia, bulimia, conditions that could be life-threatening.
But, I don't have girls, but I have boys, and I've taken them to the doctor every year. And these seem to be perfect questions for doctors who should ask those questions, get that information, and then advise parents, hey, watch it about school. I don't like what I'm seeing here. And I'm just so sort of bemused by the fact that nobody thought that before they thought, let's ask the schools to ask that question. But yet they did.
Well, first of all, we need to explain. We need to do a better job in the medical field of explaining why we ask the questions. The second thing is most schools want to know 1 or 2 things, clear it or not. That's what coaches want to know. So reality is, as long as the school gets the form saying yay or nay, red light, green light, that's the most important thing. The medical history stays between the provider, the family, the child, and whoever they wish to share it with. But we don't need to necessarily worry about that. It's, are you cleared or not? That's the main question most athletes want to hear about and what most coaches and administrators want to hear about.
Okay, cue the lawyer. All right, Harry Nelson, this is where my spidey senses start going bananas. If the state of Florida is going to contract out the storage of these digital files to a company, a public company called Activate, they're subpoenaable. And if they're, it's so easy to connect this line, right? That if a young girl decides to get an abortion, an illegal abortion in this new world, that could be evidence used against her, and her family would have to face that music in court. Something they thought would help her bone health is now maybe going to see her put away for murder at age 17.
Yeah, it's actually, you're pointing to a really important point that people need to understand, which is that when you input information like menstrual history into these general websites that are not healthcare providers, they are not subject to any consumer privacy or HIPAA or other medical privacy laws. There needs to be much better state and federal protection of general consumer privacy for this kind of data. Because as you described, we've already had cases where law enforcement went online and got data online to pinpoint that there had been an illegal termination of a pregnancy. So this is really already happening.
And this just might be Florida, but look, this is a new world we're living in post-Roe. So it's not whether you're pro-abortion or anti-abortion. This is about your kids, and sometimes kids do things unbeknownst to parents. And they can sometimes skirt the law, and parents will have no idea. So, Dr. Coutures, I wanted to ask you what your thought was when you learned that the documents that you had helped to draw up were actually, being contracted out to an outside storage facility. I say that because digital is a facility, and the outside storage facility is not under the protections of HIPAA and privacy.
Well, it made me realize we're living in a whole different world than we put these forms together just a few years ago. And I have the same fears about privacy. I have the same fears about the confidential nature of the discussion we have in the exam room. And is that information going to be shared in a way that could be detrimental to the health of both the athlete and his or her family? That's a problem. So I do have my concerns that these pieces of information are being shared in a way that's not in the best interest of the young athlete and her family.
So to that end, Harry Nelson, if, let's just say, something went awry, you had no idea that your 17 or 18-year-old daughter got pregnant, sought an abortion without you knowing, this happens, people. Would you have any idea as the parent that the police are subpoenaing an outside company called Activate for her menstrual records? Would the parent have any right to know that?
It's an interesting question. If the girl in question is a minor, it's certainly possible that her parents might find out about it. But there's no guarantee about exactly how the request would come. But more importantly, there's also no end to where this information could end up, because what we see is that a lot of these companies that are storing information, again, that are not healthcare providers, are reselling that data. So all of a sudden, your daughter's information, her menstrual history, might be in the hands of all kinds of databases. We saw recently that the federal government, the Federal Trade Commission, cracked down on one of these data brokers. So the bigger problem is that the information is in lots of places that wouldn't even require a subpoena that a parent might see. I mean, once the information is out there on any kind of a website, including companies like Activate, there's no end to where it could end up and where government agencies could go and poke around to find it and send subpoenas. So there's
I should be clear, though, that Activate has said that it does not sell any of this data at all. But again, I think the big critical issue here is that they are subject to subpoena, and public institutions, like the government is not, has to protect the privacy, the medical privacy through HIPAA. You couldn't subpoena the school for that kind of information. But wow, what a whole new head scratcher this is going to create. Thank you, Chris Coutures. I appreciate it. And Harry Nelson, really appreciate your wisdom on this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.